Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I'm so happy to have as our guest another nurse, Nita Kasan, RN. She's a master's prepared registered nurse whose professional career has ranged from critical care to flight nursing to serving as a lieutenant commander in the United States Naval Reserve Nurse Corps to chief nursing officer and chief operating officer in multiple hospitals throughout the U.S. Nita has a passion for helping herself and others upgrade their body, their mind, and their lives through the proven science of biohacking and ketones. And her website, for those of you who want to find out more after our show, is ketonita.com. Easy to remember, and we'll also have a live link on our archives. Today, we're going to be talking about fat loss, focus, and energy. Everybody's interested in that, utilizing the body's preferred fuel source to optimize health and performance. So thank you so much for joining us today, Nita.
Ellen, thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's great to talk to your audience. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Now you have, and thank you for your service, by the way, you're a lieutenant commander in the United States Naval Reserve Nurse Corps. What is that?
So that was a while ago, but I had at one point had decided that I wanted to join the Naval Reserves and the Nurse Corps. And I was with a fleet hospital unit out of Minneapolis, and a fleet hospital unit is similar to MASH, if you've seen the television show MASH, where it's field medicine. And it was quite an amazing experience to be involved with the military, obviously, but also to work with a team in that capacity. Very different, obviously, than our typical nursing careers in hospitals. And so, yeah, that was just a really a great experience for me. I learned a lot and have a tremendous respect for anyone that serves, no matter what branch. But and I certainly understand why the United States is so successful with many of our military operations.
Moving forward, we don't have visual on our radio show here, but if people do go to your website, ketonita.com, and see you, you're not a kid with all these years of experience, and you're a nurse, and you look fantastic.
Thank you.
You do. What made you actually commit to keeping yourself in such great shape?
I think that I was exposed to a healthy lifestyle when I was about 21 years old and had actually moved to California. I was raised in Pennsylvania. I moved to California. I started working that really was the beginning of my nursing career, starting at Stanford Hospital out there in Palo Alto. But I really had never been athletic or anything as a kid. I really wasn't exposed to any of that. But once I got out there, I started with, I just had met some people, got exposed to things like racquetball and different types of aerobics and weight training. And that just kind of led to, I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with how I felt. I fell in love with the ability to kind of change the way that I felt and looked by how I was eating. I ended up getting involved with bodybuilding, which was a very interesting stage in my life. I think from not only the physical side, but the mental side and the disciplinary side of things. So that was something that I think all of those things kind of set the stage. Over the years, I have always continued to work out. I've always continued to be, interested in diet and nutrition. Have never been completely radical down, one thing or another, but have always just recognized that this is something that's just so important for all of us. And And I think too, and you know this obviously as a nurse and being out there, you know, in the health world, you know, when you're exposed to things that people can experience because they haven't paid attention to their health, it's pretty scary. But I think it just, you know, it's always given me that desire to just want to continue to help people on the front end, much more on the proactive side of things versus on the reactive side. I think that once people do have some type of an issue, some type of a chronic illness, whatever it might be, you know, we have a tremendous healthcare system, and obviously there's some amazing things that can be done. But I just, you know, if people don't have to get to that point, that's where my passion is. You know, how do we prevent that? You know, and it's interesting because I know that, you know, for me, not only have I been kind of focused on that my entire life, but also, you know, you mentioned ketones. Ketones is something that's a part of my life. It's something that I was introduced to.
Right. Well, we're gonna get to that in a minute.
Sure.
So thank you for all that sharing. So what you're saying in a nutshell is that you yourself have stayed very committed to the fact that you have to take action if you want to stay healthy, that your body is a very important part of a focus, because just, you know, eating a lot of cakes and cookies and mostly sitting around all day has its consequences.
It certainly does.
You know, there does have to be a change of focus if you do want to move towards fat loss, focus, and energy.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a matter of, you know, not waiting and not thinking about, you know, well, I'll start tomorrow. You know, today is the day. And I think that, you know, it's just a matter of recognizing that we can, even if somebody has lived a very unhealthy life, we can make those changes. We can start and, you know, do things that can really start to change and improve and transform our health and our lives.
So my son, who also is very into physical fitness, his name is Titus Kahutek, and anyone can find him online, as you can as well. He's an amazing person, and he also is very involved in a word that I saw in your description, and maybe we'll tell people what is it, and that is biohacking.
Yes. Oh, it's interesting. You know, I think one of the things that we, you know, as human beings, it's tough to be disciplined to stick to a lot of different things. And biohacking is really kind of a way of achieving, you know, from the physical perspective, achieving some of the physical goals that you're looking to achieve, but almost having kind of a shortcut, if you will. And so, you know, the biohacking is just figuring out what it is that you might need to do for your body, whether it's physically or nutritionally or whatever it might be, that can help you kind of leapfrog toward the goals that you are trying to achieve, if that makes sense. So it's kind of shortcutting sometimes. And figuring that out. For some people, it might be, you know, they might recognize that I'll use this example. You know, there's a lot of people that will go to the gym and they'll get on a treadmill for 30 minutes and they'll walk fast on a treadmill, or they'll get on a bike and they'll do the bike for 30 minutes. And, you know, 3 years later, they recognize that they necessarily haven't changed physically. Maybe they're in better cardiovascular condition, but they haven't really changed physically. And they're kind of saying, what is it? Why? And the reality is there's probably a very different way to approach their physical fitness that could help them achieve their goals much faster. So maybe it's introducing weight training. Maybe it's introducing HIIT training, where it's kind of high intensity type of training. So I think, you know, we've got so many experts out there to help us learn the different types of things that we could do that could expedite the changes that we might be looking for.
But a real point that you brought up, and let me introduce you again at this point for those of you who just tuned in. I'd like you to know that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse at naturalnurse.com. And today, my guest is also Nurse Nita Kasan. And she has a long beautiful history of work and also was lieutenant commander in the United States Naval Reserve Corps. And today she's sharing with us fat loss, focus, and energy. Who would not want that? And you can find her at ketonita.com. So we talked a little bit about biohacking, which it sounds like you're saying is more a state of mind than a specific action.
Not necessarily. I would say that it's probably a combination of both. I think it's definitely a specific action that might be related to something you're doing physically, something you're doing nutritionally that can kind of trick your body. I guess is maybe a way to say that. Kind of trick your body to kind of leapfrog into some of the changes that you might be looking for. But definitely the mind is a big part of it.
So it's bringing it together. But yes. Now there are things that you can introduce to your body in terms of foods. And then a specific thing we want to talk about, because many people may never have heard of it, are ketones. Mm-hmm. So how do ketones play into the fat loss, focus, and energy paradigm?
So, I want to go back about 100 years. Actually, let's go back to the beginning of time. So the beginning of man, when you think about, our native state, we didn't have, people didn't have McDonald's and they didn't have, grocery stores and they didn't have all these things that certainly we have today. And so you think about how people ate. First of all, they typically would have long periods of fasting because they didn't always have food at their fingertips. And they were eating a lot of meat. They were eating a lot of vegetables. And, they were basically in a state of ketosis because especially when they would, when you're going for a period of time, you're eating a certain way and you're going for a period of time, your body is kind of creating its own fuel. And what it's creating is ketones. We have a certain amount of body fat on us. That body fat can start to break down if we don't have sugar or glucose. And of course, they didn't have a lot of that back then. So their body was producing the energy and producing these ketones, which was and is our body's preferred fuel source. So kind of, jump forward. And then about 100 years ago, back in the 1920s, actually, there were some doctors that had developed the ketogenic diet, very, very high fat, very, very low carbohydrate. And what they were doing was they were working with children that had epilepsy. So they had figured out that this type of a diet somewhat mimicked intermittent fasting. And what they found with these children was that when they put them on this ketogenic diet, that their seizures would either completely go away or significantly decrease. And that was pretty amazing because that was before all these drugs were out there for, all these pharmaceutical kinds of things for that condition. And then as time went on and as different pharmaceutical drugs and things were introduced, I think that the focus shifted a little bit. And then I would say that the ketogenic diet itself came back into focus, probably around the 1990s or so, when a lot of Hollywood stars, whatever, had started doing the ketogenic diet.
Also, Dr. Atkins was very involved in that because I worked with him. Yes,
absolutely. So you started seeing this focus on, kind of a high fat, low carbohydrate diet and the impact of that. So what I would probably say is that there's kind of two things. One is when someone is following a ketogenic diet, the benefits are overwhelming. I mean, it's, again, as I mentioned, our body prefers ketones over glucose for its fuel source. So if you aren't eating as much carbohydrates, so you're not going to, the fast food places and you're not eating a lot of junk and you're eating a very low carbohydrate level, you don't have a lot of glucose in your system. And so your body is creating its own fuel source, which are the ketones. There's kind of a whole process of your body fat is breaking down and, those fat cells, the breakdown of the fat cells is going through the liver and it, kind of goes through this continuous breakdown process and it creates these ketone molecules that are now in your system. And the body is using ketones for energy and fuel instead of glucose. And so what's amazing is that our brains especially prefer ketones over glucose for its fuel. And our bodies, our muscles, everything is right behind it. So the other aspect that I would say related to the ketogenic diet, you've got these incredible benefits, because once somebody is following that type of a diet, you start recognizing that you've got accelerated fat loss and decreased appetite, decreased cravings, increased energy, decreased brain fog. You've got, kind of a better mood, better sleep, better digestion, all of these things that kind of represent better human performance. Your body is functioning with the fuel source that it always wanted, but that we've denied because of the way that we've learned to eat. On the other side of things, if you think about it, following a ketogenic diet, and we're talking about 5% carbohydrates. I mean, that's, maybe a handful of strawberries, So if you think about following that type of a diet, it's extremely, extremely difficult. And that's one of the reasons why many people that try the ketogenic diet don't succeed or don't continue on it, because you start to eat that way, and it can take a period of time before your body actually gets into what's called ketosis. And ketosis just means that you've got ketones in your system. And now your body's, kind of functioning off of the ketones for fuel. So it can take, for some people, it can take a couple of days. For some people, it can take a couple of weeks. For some people, even longer. And what's happening during that period of time, a lot of people refer to that as the keto flu, where you don't feel good. Your body is transitioning, and it's kind of going through this detox process, basically, of shifting from glucose to ketones for fuel. So that's one thing. And I think a lot of people, shift away because it doesn't feel good. And then at the same time, even once they get to the point where they are in ketosis, if they were to have a sandwich or have something or have a certain number of carbs, it kicks you right out of ketosis, and it's kind of like starting all over again. So that was, that's kind of the incredible side of the ketogenic diet, as well as the downside of that. And,
right. That's why one of the things we absolutely were interested in putting people in ketosis in Dr. Atkins' clinic, and also at the clinic I worked at, which was with Dr. Serafina Corsello, which was right down the block. We all had meetings constantly. And one of the things we did was test kidney function while people were in a state of ketosis.
Yes. And what did you find? Were you seeing any issues at all, or?
Very rarely.
Yeah, that's my experience as well, and I think so much of it again is because you are, you're giving your body what it's always been, kind of thriving for, or wanting for that fuel source. It's interesting. I think when I mentioned about kind of the brain preferring ketones over glucose, if you think about the fact that in order for glucose to get through our system, it has to be carried by insulin. And so when you've got a lot of glucose, you've got a lot of insulin that's being produced, you've got all this stuff that's going on, and it has clearly affected our health over time. One of the statistics that I just can never get out of my head that, comes from the Centers for Disease Control is that right now, 6 in 10 Americans have at least one chronic disease, and 4 in 10 actually have 2 or more. And so when you think about, oh my gosh, that it's just amazing what has happened with our health.
I know. You know what I think? What I think, Nurse Nita, is that is one of the reasons that we have the highest death rate from COVID than any country in the world.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you look at some of the research that's centered around all of that, and you make the connection between obesity, being overweight, chronic disease, and now this new this new situation with COVID that we're dealing with. You're absolutely right. And if nothing else, in the past year and a half, I hope that has been a little bit more of a wake up call, I guess, to people to not only recognize that being healthy is not just about, kind of what you see in the mirror and feeling good in a bathing suit or whatever. Being healthy is what's going to affect our lives as different challenges come our way.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of ketones, you explained to us, how someone might get there through a diet. Now, there are actually new things available, which would be like a dietary supplement that you can use to increase your ketones. And they may be referred to as exogenous ketones. What are exogenous ketones?
So, and great question. So when everything that I was just explaining about the ketogenic diet and how your body produces its own ketones, those are considered endogenous ketones because they're being produced by our body itself. Exogenous ketones would be something that you would be putting into your body. So from the outside, you're putting into your body. And, what happened was probably about 11 or 12 years ago, the United States Navy and the Department of Defense actually had an issue that they were trying to deal with and trying to figure out a solution. And the issue was that you've got the Navy divers that will do very, very deep dives. And a lot of times they will wear what's considered an oxygen rebreather mask. And that rebreather mask is what prevents bubbles from going to the surface. Obviously, that's a huge safety, concern for these Navy divers when they might be in very, precarious situations. But at the same time, they find that that type of a helmet can cause them to have seizures or blackout. And so they kind of went back and looked at, all right, we recognize that there's a ketogenic diet that has helped with epilepsy and with some of these kinds of things. Is there something that could be done or something that could be created that could help these folks when they're in this kind of situation? And so they started looking for some of the top researchers or connecting with some of the top researchers related to the ketogenic diet all over the world. And one of the key individuals that they decided to work with was Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who is actually here. I'm in Florida. He's actually here in Florida at the University of South Florida. And that led to several years of research. And a part of it was they were kind of saying, is there a pill? Is there something, that these folks could take so that they would prevent this kind of situation from occurring? And those couple of years of research led to the development of these exogenous ketones. So basically, you're talking about a powder that can be mixed with water that when you drink it, your body actually goes into ketosis within less than 59 minutes. And you can prove that by using a keto stick, which you can just get at a drugstore. You check your urine and you can see that you've got ketones in your urine. So now let's go back to the word biohacking. So now you have biohacked your body into ketosis versus, the step one or the first option was following a very, very strict ketogenic diet and going through all of those things. Another option now is to have the nutritional supplement of exogenous ketones, something that is, takes 30 seconds to mix up and drink and is putting your body into ketosis. So you're creating the same end result, but the process of getting there is obviously very, very different. And now the research has continued, just significant amount of research that's continued related to all of that, looking at those benefits that people are experiencing with exogenous ketones versus endogenous ketones.
So I happened to look into this because we were doing the show today, and there's some really interesting research. For instance, there's a review article in Experimental and Molecular Medicine in 2020, which is quite recent, about one of these exogenous ketones that people might want to look into. And one is called beta-hydroxybutyrate and its metabolic effect on age-associated pathology. So it really was looking at that, how you can take this kind of supplement, and that is a ketone. So you're sort of taking it directly instead of waiting for your body to produce it.
Exactly. And, I mentioned earlier about how, today's the day, so, and I think that so many people wake up in the morning and it's like, okay, today is the day. I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to move my body. I'm going to really start taking care of myself because I don't want to keep going down the wrong road. And, the hard part is a lot of times we get to about noon and everything kind of just, falls apart. Maybe we eat the wrong thing or we slept too late or whatever it might be. And I think that one of the things that has been exciting to see with the exogenous ketones is that they are a tool. There's no magic pill out there, but they are a tool to support someone who's trying to transform their life or who's trying to go down that right road. So if you're able to have this type of a nutritional supplement where you are decreasing your appetite somewhat, you are decreasing your cravings, those are the things that make us eat wrong to begin with. We're hungry and we're so short in our time or we're busy or whatever it might be. So if you've got something that's able to bridge that gap, I think maybe from where you are today to where you want to be, and you can experience more energy, more focus, something that makes you feel like you want to get off the couch and actually move. Maybe your muscles aren't hurting as much. Maybe you've got, increased strength and some of those kinds of things. Better sleep, you're experiencing better digestion, better sleep, all these benefits of ketones and ketosis that we've known about, like I said, for over 100 years. And first of all, I appreciate what you were saying about, yes, I'm no spring chicken, but I think one of the things, I would probably say that, the term anti-aging, I always thought it was a slogan. I mean, anti-aging, it's used in so many different ways. But I think that's probably what I really thought maybe 5 years ago before I started, introducing ketones into my own life. And, 5 years later, honestly, I realized that I am chronologically 5 years older, but I am definitely 5 years younger. And, when you look at the benefits, you think about what is it that causes us to age, and we're aging quicker because we're not eating right. And we are, we're not moving our bodies. We're not sleeping good. I mean, I don't know how many people have issues with sleep. It's like, it's such a significant challenge. And, if you are able to do something that kind of benefits all of those things, how you're eating, how you're feeling, how you're moving, what's going on internally, how your brain is reacting, all of those things to me represent anti-aging. So if you are improving those, yeah.
Thank you for that, Nita. We're actually getting to the end of our time together, but that was a wonderful, wonderful concept so people can think about perhaps adding into their healthy routine something that you talk about more at Nita.com, where you would actually take a supplement that improves your keto status. But we're not saying you just take that and you keep eating, McDonald's and donuts and lay around all day. But if you're making this decision, it's a wonderful thing that can really increase the outcome, the positive outcome of your efforts to have what I call a graceful aging rather than an anti-aging.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
So we're going to end, and I want to thank you so much for being our guest today, right here on Herbally Yours.
Thank you, Ellen. It's been wonderful talking with you.
And thank you, listeners. You've been listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For more information, you can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.